On Thanksgiving night, my own son handed me a garbage bag with my clothes already folded inside it and told me the house I raised him in wasn't mine to keep anymore. 5 weeks later, that same boy was on his knees in a marble lobby in front of people in expensive suits, begging. And the old man standing beside me, the one everybody in that room swore I'd only helped out of pity, the one they figured was nobody. He leaned close to my ear and said 6 words I will never forget as long as I live. Gloria, tell them who I am. I'm getting ahead of myself. I do that. 30 years of holding people's hands while they left this world will teach you to skip to the ending because you learn real quick that the ending is the only part folks remember. But you deserve the whole thing, start to finish. Because if I've learned anything at 63 years old, it's that the coldest night of your life and the best thing that ever happened to you can turn out to be the exact same night. You just don't know it yet while you're standing in the snow. My name is Gloria Freeman. I spent my whole life taking care of other people as a nurse, as a wife, as a mother. And on the worst night of my life, with nothing left in my purse but a folded $20 bill and my late husband's gloves in my coat pocket, I gave that 20 away to a shivering stranger. Everybody else on that street walked right past. I had no idea what I was really doing. So before I tell you the rest, do me a favor. Comment down below and tell me the city you're watching from. I want to see how far this old woman's story travels. Go on. I'll wait right here. Now, let me take you back. I need you to understand what kind of house it was before I tell you how I lost it. It was a 2-story on Larchmere here on the east side of Cleveland. Brick with a porch my Samuel built with his own 2 hands the summer before Darius was born. We bought it in 1989 for $41,000, and it took us 19 years to pay off every last penny. I remember the day we mailed that final check. Sam took me out for fish fry at a little place on Shaker Square, and he held my hand across the table and said, "Glo, nobody can ever put us out now. This is ours. This is forever." Sam was wrong about the forever part. He passed 4 years ago. A stroke in his sleep the day after Easter. I was a hospice nurse for 30 years. I sat with hundreds of families on the worst night of their lives, and I always knew the right thing to say. And then it happened to me in my own bed, and I didn't know anything at all. I just held his cold hand and waited for the sun to come up. But the house stayed mine. I kept his gray wool gloves in the pocket of my winter coat, and every time my fingers found them, I'd think, Sam, we did it. Nobody can put us out. I want to tell you about the work I did too, because it matters to what comes later. For 30 years, I worked hospice, which is a fancy way of saying I was there at the end. I held the hands of people whose own children couldn't bear to walk into the room. I learned that dying folks aren't afraid of much. Mostly they're just afraid of being alone in the dark. So I'd pull my chair up close and I'd hum the old hymns my mama taught me. His eye is on the sparrow, precious Lord, soft and low, and I'd stay long past the end of my shift, because a shift is a made-up thing, but a person's last breath only happens once. My supervisor used to fuss at me about the overtime. I never once collected it. That's just who I am. My mama raised me to believe you don't help people to get something back. You help them because there's a need in front of you, and God put you there to fill it. Kindness, she used to say, is the only thing you can give away and end up with more of. I only tell you that so you'll understand why I did what I did in the snow, and why I never once expected a single thing in return. Now my Darius. Lord, I loved that boy. Still do. That's the part that hurts to say out loud. He was 34 that Thanksgiving. My only child. Smart as anything, always chasing the big idea, the deal that was going to make him rich. He'd started a business a couple years back, some kind of investment thing. I never fully understood it, and it had gone bad. Real bad, I'd come to learn later. And 2 years back, he'd sat at my kitchen table with a stack of papers and told me it would be smart for tax reasons to put his name on the deed alongside mine, in case anything ever happened to me. So there'd be no mess, no probate, no lawyers. I trusted my son. So I signed. I want you to hear me clearly on that, because it becomes important I chose to add his name. Freely. It was a gift from a mother who loved her boy and didn't have a suspicious bone in her body. There was nothing wrong with what I signed that day. It was what he did after that I never saw coming. His wife was named Whitney. Pretty girl, always put together, always looking just past you when she talked like there was somebody more important standing behind your shoulder. I tried with Whitney. I did. I'd invite her to church, offer her my mother's peach cobbler recipe, ask about her people. She'd smile that smile that never quite reached her eyes and change the subject to something they wanted to buy. They wanted a lot of things, those two. So, Thanksgiving. I'd been cooking since 5 in the morning. Turkey, of course, and my cornbread dressing the collards with the smoked turkey wing, the mac and cheese Darius has loved since he was 6 years old, sweet potato pie cooling on the counter. The whole house smelled like every good memory I ever had. I'd set the good china, Sam's mother's china, and I'd put on my nice blue dress, and I stood at the window at 2 o'clock, watching for their car like a girl waiting for a date. They came at 3, and I knew the second they walked in that something was wrong because they didn't take their coats off. You cook a Thanksgiving meal for people who love you. They take their coats off. They breathe in and say, and go straight for the mac and cheese with a spoon before you can stop them. Darius and Whitney stood in my front hall in their coats, and Whitney was holding something down at her side, and my son couldn't look at me. "Mama," he said, "sit down. We need to talk to you about the house." I did not sit down. I've found in my life that the people who tell you to sit down are usually about to do something they'd rather you not be standing up for. The house is in my name now, Mama. Legally. And Whitney and we've got a buyer. A real good offer. This whole street's being bought up, and the number they're giving us, it's life-changing money. It's the smart move. I remember the smell of that sweet potato pie behind me still warm, and how wrong it was against the words coming out of his mouth. "This is my home," I said. "Your daddy built that porch." "You'll be more comfortable somewhere else," Whitney said. "Not will help you find somewhere. Just you'll be more comfortable somewhere else, like I was a piece of furniture that didn't match the room anymore. There are real nice senior communities. You won't have all these stairs. It's honestly better for you, Gloria. Better for you. They always say it's better for you when it's better for them." And then my son said the thing that I think finally broke something in me. He said gentle, like he was doing me a kindness, "Mama, be reasonable. You're getting older. You can't keep this whole place up by yourself. It's too much for a woman your age." A woman my age. 63. I'd buried a husband, worked 30 years of night shifts, raised the man standing in front of me, and here he was telling me my age like it was a diagnosis. That's when I noticed what Whitney was holding. It was a garbage bag, black plastic. And through the plastic I could see the shapes of my own things folded. Sweaters, my good robe, my photographs. They had packed my clothes, before they ever walked through my door before the turkey. Before "sit down, Mama," before a single word, they had already gone through my closet and packed my life into a trash bag. This wasn't a conversation. It had never been a conversation. They'd come to my Thanksgiving table with a mind already made up and a bag already packed, and everything they said to my face was just the paperwork. I looked at that bag for a long time, longer than was comfortable for anybody. And you know the strangest thing, I didn't cry. Not then. I've cried plenty since, but not then. I just walked to the closet and I put on my winter coat, the one with Sam's gray gloves still in the pocket, and I wound my mother's blue scarf around my neck, and I picked up my purse, which had exactly one $20 bill in it, and not much else. "Mama, where are you going? It's snowing. Don't be dramatic, it's late." "Enjoy the dinner," I said. "The mac and cheese needs 10 more minutes." And I opened my own front door and stepped out into the first snow of the season, and the door clicked shut behind me, and I heard the deadbolt turn. They'd already had the locks changed. I stood on Sam's porch in the falling snow, with nowhere on this earth to go. My sister was down in Georgia, 700 miles, and a plane ticket I couldn't afford away. My friends were all couple friends, church friends, the kind you can't call at 9 o'clock on Thanksgiving to say my son just put me out. The shame of it sat on my chest like a stone. So I did the only thing my legs knew how to do. I walked. Past the houses all lit up gold and warm families inside laughing over pie. Past the church where Sam and I got married on a June morning in 1986. Past 38 years of a life that had just been packed into a garbage bag. The snow soaked clean through my good shoes. My feet went numb somewhere around the second block, but I kept walking because moving hurt less than standing still. And eventually I came to the bus shelter on Shaker Square, the same square where Sam once held my hand and swore nobody could ever put us out, and I sat down on that cold metal bench and I finally let myself feel the whole weight of it. 63 years old, locked out of my own home, alone on the coldest night of my life with $20 to my name. I thought that was the bottom. I had no idea that the bottom was about to become the beginning and that he was already walking toward me through the snow. I don't know how long I sat there before I heard him. Long enough that I'd stopped feeling my feet. Long enough that the snow had gathered in my lap and I hadn't bothered to brush it off. I was somewhere far away in my own head, back in a kitchen that wasn't mine anymore, when a sound cut through the quiet. Footsteps. Slow, uneven. somebody dragging their feet through the fresh snow. I looked up, and coming toward the bus shelter was a man. Older than me, 70 maybe more. Tall but stooped over against the cold and dressed all wrong for a night like that. A thin jacket, no hat, no gloves. His collar turned up like it could do a thing against the wind. His lips had gone that gray-blue color, and he was shaking. Not shivering, shaking the deep kind that comes from the bone. 30 years of nursing doesn't switch off just because your own life fell apart. I looked at that man and my whole body went on alert, because I've seen that color of lips, and I know what it means. That man was in trouble. He stopped a few feet from the bench and swayed like the ground had tilted under him. He looked at me, but his eyes weren't quite landing right. Glassy, confused. "Is this—" He started and stopped. Started again. "The number 9. Does it I'm supposed to—" His words came out broken, half-finished, trailing off into the snow. "Ruth's waiting. I have to—" "Sir," I said, standing up slow so I wouldn't startle him. "Sir, look at me. What's your name?" He blinked at me a long moment like the question was hard. That right there scared me more than the cold did. "A man doesn't have to think about his own name." "Elias," he finally said. "Elias. Good. That's good." I kept my voice low and easy, the voice I used 1,000 times on 1,000 frightened people in the dark. "Elias, I need you to come sit down next to me. Can you do that right here? Come on now. And here's a thing I want you to understand because it matters to everything that came after. I was a woman who'd just been locked out of her own home with $20 to her name. By every right in the world, I had my own troubles to tend to. But my mama used to say you don't get to pick the hour God puts a need in front of you. He put one in front of me on that bench, and I was not raised to step over a freezing man because my own feet were cold. He sat, heavy like his strings had been cut. Up close, he smelled faintly of a hospital, that clean, sharp smell I'd know anywhere, and I filed that away without knowing what to do with it. First thing I got the coffee. I still had my little thermos in my purse, 1 cup left lukewarm now, but warm is warm. I wrapped both his shaking hands around that cup and held them there with mine until he could hold it himself. That's when I noticed his hands. They weren't the hands of a man who'd been on the street. The nails were clean and trimmed neat. The skin was cared for. And on his left wrist in the streetlight, there was a pale band of untanned skin, a stripe of white where something heavy used to sit. Like a watch, I thought. A man who takes off a watch has somewhere to put it back on. But he was half frozen and rambling, and it didn't add up to anything yet, so I let it go. Next, the gloves. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out Sam's gray wool gloves, the ones I'd carried for 4 years, like a piece of him, and I worked them onto Elias's cold hands, 1 finger at a time, the way you'd dress a child. My throat got tight doing it, but Sam would have wanted his gloves keeping a freezing man warm a whole lot more than he'd want them sitting in my pocket. I know that like I know my own name. "There," I said, "there you go." We sat a while. I kept him talking, not about anything, just talking, because I needed his mind working and his blood moving. And slow, real slow, I watched him come back to himself. The shaking eased. Some color crept back into his face. His eyes stopped their wandering and started actually looking at me. Whatever fog had been over him when he stumbled up to that shelter, it was lifting like weather passing. "You're a nurse," he said suddenly. I laughed, surprised. "Now how in the world would you know that?" He almost smiled. "The way you put the gloves on. Nobody does it like that unless they've done it 1,000 times. He studied my face in that quiet way some old men have. "What's your name?" "Gloria." He went still. Just for a second, a small hitch like a needle catching on a record. Then it passed, and he said soft, "Gloria. That's a good name. That's a nurse's name if I ever heard one." I didn't think a thing of it then. An old man being kind. That's all it seemed like. I'd learn different later. "Where were you headed, Elias, out here with no gloves on Thanksgiving?" The question seemed to cost him something. I'm not sure. I was somewhere warm and then I wasn't. Some nights the missing gets a hold of me and my feet just start walking. He looked down at Sam's gloved hands. "My wife passed. She used to handle the cold better than me. She'd laugh at me right now." "I'm sorry," I said, and I meant it all the way down. "I lost my husband 4 years back. Some nights my feet start walking too." He turned and really looked at me then. "You've got that look about you tonight. Like the ground came out from under you. And I don't know why. Maybe it was the dark. Maybe it was that he was a stranger I'd never see again." But I told him. I told him about Darius and the garbage bag and the deadbolt turning behind me. The whole ugly thing out loud for the first time. He was quiet when I finished, Then he asked gentle, "Where's the house?" "Larchmere," I said, "off Shaker." Something crossed his face when I said it. A flicker there and gone like a shadow moving behind a window. I thought it was just sorrow for me. I was wrong about that too, but I didn't know it yet. "That's a hard thing," he said finally, "to be put out by your own blood. There's no cold like that one." "No," I said, "there isn't." We sat with that a minute, and then he said the thing I have thought about every single day since. My Ruth used to say something when I'd come in half frozen and fussing. He smiled somewhere far away. She'd say the cold can't reach a warm heart. Used to drive me crazy, but I think she was right, Gloria. I think it's the only thing that's kept me upright these 6 years. The cold can't reach a warm heart. I don't know why those words landed in me the way they did. They felt familiar, like a song I'd heard so long ago I'd forgotten I knew it. I couldn't place it, and I sat there a second grasping at the edge of it, and then it slipped away. It would come back to me, but not for 5 more weeks. And when it did, it would break me wide open. I reached into my purse and I took out the last thing I had in this world. That folded $20 bill. "Elias, I want you to take this. Get yourself somewhere warm tonight. There's an all-night diner over on the square." He shook his head hard. No, I can't take a woman's last dollar. I've got..." He patted at his thin jacket, confused again for a second, coming up empty. "No, absolutely not. My mama didn't raise me to sit next to a cold man with money in my purse," I said, and I folded that bill right into his gloved hand and closed his fingers over it. "It's not a favor. It's just what a person does. Take it." His hand was still shaking when it closed around the money, and I don't think all of it was the cold. He looked at me for a long moment. Then he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out something small. He pressed it into my palm, the same way I'd pressed the money into his. It was a little bird, carved out of wood no bigger than my thumb, worn smooth and dark like it had been handled 1,000 times. A songbird wings, tucked sweet little thing. "I can't take your money and give you nothing," he said. "Keep this. For later. You'll know when." "Elias, I don't need." "Kindness given in the dark," he said. And there was something in how he said it. Steady, certain, like a man used to giving and not one bit used to receiving. Always finds its way home, Gloria. Every time. You just have to be patient enough to let it. He closed my fingers over that little wooden bird. And then he stood steadier now than when he'd come my husband's gloves on his hands, and he thanked me, and he walked off into the falling snow toward the square. I watched until the white swallowed him up, and then I was alone again on that bench with no money, no home, and a tiny carved bird sitting warm in the palm of my hand. I didn't get a room that night. Couldn't I'd given my last 20 to a stranger, and I wasn't one bit sorry. I walked to that all-night diner myself, and a tired young waitress named Renee took one look at me and let me sit in a back booth over a single cup of coffee till the sun came up and never once told me to order more or move along. There's kindness everywhere if you know how to see it. I was learning to see it. 2 days later, a woman from my old church, Deacon Willie's wife, heard what happened and helped me get into a weekly rooming house over on Buckeye, a narrow little room with a hot plate and a window that stuck. It wasn't home, but it had a windowsill, and I set that little wooden bird right in the middle of it where the morning light would catch it. I figured I'd never see Elias again. Figured he was just a kind, broken old man the Lord had put in my path so I'd have somebody to be good to on the worst night of my life. I could not have been more wrong about that man if I'd tried. 4 days went by. I spent them the way you spend days when your whole life has been packed into a garbage bag. Badly. I called a lawyer from the phone book who wanted a retainer I didn't have. I called the county about the deed and got put on hold until the line went dead. I sat on the edge of that narrow bed in my rented room and looked at the little wooden bird on the windowsill and tried to figure out how a 63-year-old woman starts her whole life over from nothing. And then on the 4th day, I heard a car. Not a normal car. You live on a street long enough you know the sound of the cars that belong there. This one didn't belong. It was low and quiet and expensive quiet, and it pulled up right in front of my rooming house and just sat there. Engine running. Snow melting off a hood that was polished to a shine. I stood at that stuck window and watched. A man got out of the driver's side. Not the owner, you could tell. A driver in a dark coat moving careful and respectful. He came up the walk. He knocked. When I opened the door, he didn't say much. He just held out a large envelope, heavy paper, and said, "Ma'am, for you," with his compliments. I took it. My hands weren't quite steady. Inside was a pair of gray wool gloves. Sam's gloves. cleaned, brushed, soft, folded like something precious. And tucked between them, a small white card, thick as a shingle, cream-colored. And across the front in raised black letters, my fingertip could actually feel Elias Grant, Community Partners. I stood in that doorway a long time. The driver waited patient, saying nothing. And a cold little feeling started climbing up my spine. Not fear exactly, but that feeling you get when two things you know for certain refuse to fit together. Because the man I'd met on that bench had no gloves and no hat, and had to think hard to remember his own name. Homeless men don't have drivers. Homeless men don't send back your gloves dry cleaned. And homeless men in all my 63 years do not carry business cards with their names raised up off the paper, like something out of a bank. Something was wrong with the story I'd told myself about that night. I just didn't know yet how wrong. The address on that card took me downtown to the warehouse district, to a building made all of glass that threw the gray sky back at itself. I almost didn't go in. I stood on the sidewalk in my church coat, feeling like the whole street could tell I didn't belong. But my mama didn't raise a coward, so I pulled that heavy door open and I walked up to the front desk and I said the only thing I had. "My name is Gloria Freeman. I'm here to see Elias Grant." I expected them to laugh me out of there. Instead, the young woman's whole face changed. "Mrs. Freeman," she said, standing right up. "Yes, ma'am. He's been hoping you'd come. Right this way." They took me up, high up. And when the doors opened, a man was standing at a wall of windows with the whole city spread out gray and small below him. He turned around. It was Elias. But it wasn't the Elias from the bench. This man was clean-shaven, his silver hair combed back neat, wearing a dark suit that fit him like it had been sewn on. He stood straight now, not stooped. He looked like exactly what he was, a man who owned the floor he was standing on. But the eyes were the same. Those were the same eyes that had looked at me in the snow. "Gloria," he said, and his voice broke a little on it. "You came. Thank God. I was afraid I'd never get to look you in the face again." I didn't know what to say, so I said the true thing. "You lied to me." "No." He shook his head and he crossed the room toward me slow, like he didn't want to spook me. "No, Gloria, I swear to you before God I never lied to you. Come sit down, please. Let me tell you the truth, all of it. You've earned that much, and a great deal more." So I sat, and he told me. He wasn't testing anybody. That's the first thing he wanted me to know, like it shamed him that I might think it. He wasn't out there playing at being poor to see who'd be good to him. The truth was simpler and sadder than that. That night on the bench had been 6 years to the day since he lost his Ruth. "Every year on that date I fall apart a little," he said, and his hands, those cared for hands, were folded tight on the table. "This year my heart started doing something strange. Skipping. My chest went tight. My own doctors put me in the hospital that afternoon, said it was a warning, something with the blood to the brain. A small one, they said. Transient. It passes." He looked out the window. "But it does something to your mind while it's happening. Turns everything to fog." And I was already grieving, already half out of my head with missing her, and somewhere in that fog I just got up and walked out. Right out of the hospital in my jacket, no gloves into the snow. My people were tearing the city apart looking for me. I don't remember most of it, Gloria. I remember being colder than I've ever been. And I remember a woman with kind hands who wouldn't let me freeze, who put her own husband's gloves on me and gave me the last dollar in her purse and asked for nothing back. He turned from the window and looked at me. "You saved my life that night." Not as a figure of speech. The doctors told me another hour in that cold and they'd have been burying me next to Ruth. "You are the only reason I'm sitting here." I didn't know where to put all that. It's a heavy thing to learn you kept a man on this earth without even knowing you were doing it. "I'd have done it for anybody," I said, "because I would have." "I know," he said quietly. "That's exactly the point. That's what I can't get over." Then he straightened up, and the businessman came back into his face, and he told me why he'd really sent that car. "I run a foundation, Gloria. My company does the buildings, but the foundation is where my heart is. It's what Ruth built with me before she got sick. We put money into neighborhoods, housing for elders, job training clinics. And I'll be honest with you right now, it's run by good people with business degrees who have never once needed the help they're handing out. I've been looking for years for someone who knows, who sat in the dark with people at the worst moment of their lives, who helps because it's simply who they are." He slid a folder across the table. "I want to offer you a position, community liaison. You'd be the one who goes out and finds the people who need us and makes sure we actually reach them. The salary is $95,000 a year with full benefits. And before you tell me you're not qualified, Gloria, I have watched people with every qualification in the world walk past a dying man in the snow. You didn't. That's the only qualification I care about. $95,000. More money than I'd ever made in my life. Enough to build a whole new life out of the ashes of the old one. I should have been overjoyed. And part of me was. But another part of me, the part that had spent 4 days trying to save my house, couldn't quite let go of the fight I was still losing. That's a generous offer, Mr. Grant, and I'll think on it. I truly will. But right now my head's full of my own troubles. I'm about to lose the only home I've got, and I don't have the first idea how to stop it. He nodded, sympathetic. Your son. You told me that night. He paused. May I ask the house on Larchmere? Do you know who your son sold it to? No, some company. A buyer, he said. This whole street's getting bought up, he told me. Big money. I shook my head. I don't even know who's putting me out of my own house. And that's when I watched something happen to Elias Grant's face that I have never forgotten. He went still. All that warmth just stopped like a cloud crossing the sun. He asked me very carefully, like the answer mattered more than I could understand. Gloria, what was the address? I told him. He didn't say anything for a moment. He got up, walked to a cabinet, and pulled out a thick-bound file. He set it down and turned it toward me open and pointed one finger at a map. A map of my neighborhood. My whole street, block by block, shaded and labeled and marked up in a way that meant somebody had been studying it for a long time. This is a redevelopment project my company has been quietly assembling for 2 years, he said. His voice had gone rough. Property by property, this entire block of Larchmere. His finger moved to the list of parcels, and then to a name typed on a pending contract plain as day. Seller's representative Darius Freeman. Gloria, Elias said. And I have never heard a man sound so sick at his own self. The buyer taking your house the money that put you out on that bench Thanksgiving night. He didn't finish it. He didn't have to. It was him. It was his company. The very man I'd saved from freezing to death was without either one of us knowing it, sitting on the other side of the exact deal that had destroyed my life. The whole room went quiet. Snow ticked against the tall windows. And somewhere underneath the shock of it, my nurse's instinct, the same one that had spotted those gray-blue lips in the dark, stirred and lifted its head. Because a thought had come to me cold and clear. If his company was buying my house from my son, then somewhere in that thick file was every piece of paper my son had signed, including whatever he'd signed with my name. Mr. Grant, I said slowly, I'd like to see those papers. All of them. Every last one my son put his hand to. Elias looked at me for a long moment. Then he reached for the phone on his desk. There's someone you need to meet first, he said. Her name is Loretta Banks. She's the best attorney I know. And Gloria, before we open this file, I need you to be sure. Because once you see what's inside, you can't unsee it. Some truths cost you something. I thought about the garbage bag, the deadbolt. A woman your age. I've already lost everything they could take, I said. Open it. Loretta Banks was not what I expected. I'd pictured some slick downtown lawyer. What walked into that conference room was a black woman about my own age, reading glasses pushed up in her gray hair, a cardigan with a coffee stain on the sleeve, and eyes that missed absolutely nothing. She set down a banker's box, looked me over once, and said, Mrs. Freeman, I've read enough of these files in 30 years to know a good woman when one's sitting across from me. Let's find out what your boy did. She laid it all out on the long table. Every document from the Larchmere deal. Contracts, disclosures, title papers, the whole thick stack of it. And we started reading. At first it was slow. Legal language page after page, the kind of thing that makes your eyes cross. Loretta went through it with a pen, making little marks. I watched her face. I've spent my life reading faces, and I watched hers go from patient to focused to something harder. She stopped on one page. Mrs. Freeman, did you take out a loan against your house last year? A loan number, Lord number. That house was paid off, free and clear since 2008. She turned the page around to face me. It was a mortgage. A home equity loan. $180,000 borrowed against my house. Dated 11 months ago. With my name on the signature line. That's not my signature, I say, he said. My voice came out strange. I never signed that. I've never seen that paper in my life. I believe you, Loretta said quietly. And she pulled the next file. Then the next. A quitclaim deed. That's the paper that signs your share of a house over to somebody else. This one signed my half of the house over to Darius. Made him the sole owner. Free to sell it to whoever he pleased. My name on the line again, and a date. I looked at that date and the whole room tilted. Because I knew that date. I would know that date anywhere. That was last February. That was the week my chest filled up and my fever hit 103, and Darius himself drove me to the emergency room, and they kept me 5 days on oxygen with pneumonia so bad the doctor used the word touch and go. I was in a hospital bed the day my name says I signed away my home. I couldn't have held a pen. I could barely hold a cup of water. Somebody signed it for me. Somebody used my name while I lay there fighting for breath. Somebody who knew exactly where I was because he was the one who checked me in. I didn't say anything for a while. Loretta didn't rush me. She just slid a box of tissues across the table, quiet the way I'd slid 1,000 tissue boxes across 1,000 tables to families in the worst hour of their lives. Funny being on this side of it. He forged me, I finally said, just to hear it out loud, to make it real. He forged you, Loretta said. Twice. Once to borrow money against your home in your name. That debt is why you'd have walked away from that sale with almost nothing, by the way. And once to erase you off the deed so he could sell it clean. Mrs. Freeman, this isn't a family disagreement. This is fraud. This is forgery. These are felonies, and the hospital records prove the whole thing because a dead woman on oxygen can't sign a deed. I nodded. I heard all of it. And here's the strange thing, the money didn't touch me. The house didn't even touch me right then, because a worse question had opened up under all of it, and I couldn't look away from it. How long had my son been planning this? Not a bad moment. Not a weak man cornered by his debts doing one desperate thing. 11 months ago, he took out that loan. Last February, he forged the deed while I was on oxygen. This wasn't a mistake. A mistake happens fast. This was slow. This was patient. This was a man watching his mother waiting for the right moment and using the fact that she was sick and helpless as his opportunity. I sat there in that beautiful glass building, and I thought about that. And then Elias, who'd been sitting quiet in the corner letting Loretta work, cleared his throat. He looked like a man who'd rather be anywhere else. Gloria, there's one more thing. And I debated whether to show you it all because it's cruel. But you're going to be sitting across from lawyers soon, and you can't be surprised in a room like that. You need to hear it from me first, gently before you hear it from them. He nodded at Loretta. She took a small recorder out of her bag and set it on the table between us. When my company puts together a deal this size, Elias said, we require clean title. My people go over every signature. One of the young brokers working your son's file, a man named Kevin, got uneasy. Something wasn't sitting right with him. So the last time he met with your son, he left his phone recording in his pocket. Ohio law lets him do that. When our due diligence team flagged the file, Kevin brought us what he had. This is your son. 5 weeks ago. I looked at that little recorder like it was a snake. You don't have to, Elias said. Play it, I said. Loretta pressed the button. And then my son's voice came out of that little machine into that quiet room. Easy, relaxed, almost bored. A man talking about the weather. Don't worry about my mother's signature. She'll sign whatever I put in front of her. She trusts me, she always has. That's the whole thing about my mother, she just trusts. And if it ever came to it and she wouldn't sign, come on, she's an old woman. She gets confused. Who's a bank going to believe her or the paperwork? A pause on the recording. A little laugh. Kevin's voice uncomfortable asking something I couldn't make out. And then Darius again. She'll be fine. There's homes for that. Honestly, this is better for her. She can't keep up that big house anyway. A woman her age. Loretta pressed the button and the room went silent. A woman her age. The same words he'd said to my face on Thanksgiving, standing in my front hall in his coat. Now I understood they weren't something he came up with in the moment. They were a line he'd been using for weeks. A line he'd rehearsed. A little phrase he'd built to make what he was doing to me sound like a favor. I have sat with the dying. I have held hands going cold. I watched my own husband leave this world. I know grief. I am an expert in it. God help me. And I am telling you that nothing in my whole life ever hurt like the sound of my baby boy's voice, relaxed and amused, explaining to a stranger that his mother was just a trusting old fool who'd sign her own life away and never know the difference. She just trusts. He said it like it was my weakness, like the very thing I was most proud of in this whole world, that I'd raised a son in a house full of trust, that I'd loved him without holding anything back, like that was the soft spot he'd found to push on. I had held that boy the hour he was born, 2:30 in the morning, February snow on the window, and Sam crying in the hallway. I counted his fingers. I sang to him before he had a name. And somewhere between that morning and this one, he had looked at his mother and seen a mark. My hand had gone into my coat pocket without my noticing. My fingers found the little wooden bird Elias's bird worn smooth, and I held onto it so hard the edges of the wings pressed into my palm. It was the only warm thing in that whole cold room. The one bit of pure kindness left in a world that had just shown me its worst. The tears came then, finally. Not the loud kind. The quiet kind, the kind that just runs down and drips off your chin while you sit still as a stone. Elias started to reach toward me, and Loretta caught his eye, and he stopped and let me have it. Let me grieve my son in that room the way you grieve the dead. Because that's what it was. The Darius I thought I had was gone. He'd been gone a long time. I'd just been the last one to find out. I don't know how long I sat there crying over that little bird. But grief is a tide, and it goes back out. It always does. I learned that watching other people, and now I was learning it again in my own chest. Somewhere in all that hurt, down at the very bottom of it, something else started coming up. Something hard. Something I hadn't felt in a long, long time. Not revenge. I want to be clear about that. I'm too old, and I've buried too many people to have much use for revenge. But there's a thing that lives right next door to grief, and it's older than revenge, and a whole lot steadier. It's the plain refusal to let a lie stand as the truth. It's a mother who spent 63 years being told to be small and quiet and grateful, finally deciding she is done being any of those things. I wiped my face with the back of my hand. I set the little bird down on the table in front of me where I could see it. And I looked up at Loretta Banks, and I looked at Elias Grant, and when I spoke, my voice didn't shake at all. My whole life, I said, people have counted on me being too trusting to check the paperwork. My husband used to say it was the best thing about me and the most dangerous. I took a breath. Well, my son bet everything he's got on his mother being a trusting old fool who'd never look inside the file. I stood up. Let's give the bank something to believe. Loretta Banks smiled at me, then the first smile I'd seen from her slow and fierce. Mrs. Freeman, she said, I thought you'd never ask. And Elias. Elias just looked at me across that table with something in his eyes I couldn't read yet. Something that looked almost like a man watching a thing he'd given up hoping to see. He didn't say a word. I didn't know it yet, but he was thinking about a wooden bird. And a hospice. And a name he hadn't heard spoken aloud in 6 years. That part was still coming. The night before we were set to sit across the table from my son and his lawyers, Elias asked me to come by his office. Alone. He said there was something he needed to give me, and something he needed to say, and that both of them should happen before the hard day came, not after. I almost didn't go. I was tired down to my bones. But there was a weight in how he asked, so I put on my coat. Sam's gloves gone now, given away, but my mother's blue scarf still around my neck, and I went. The building was empty that late. Just him in a pool of lamplight at his big desk, the dark city glittering behind the glass. He looked older in that light. Tired the way I was tired. Sit with me a minute, Gloria. I sat, and he reached into his desk drawer and took something out and set it on the wood between us. It was a little wooden bird. For a second I thought it was mine, thought I'd left it somehow. My hand went to my coat pocket, and no, there was my bird right where it always was. I took it out and set it on the desk, and the two birds sat there side by side under the lamp. They were the same bird, the very same. Same songbird wings tucked carved by the same hand worn smooth the same way. 2 of them. A pair. I looked up at him, and I did not understand. My wife carved these, Elias said. His voice was very quiet. Both of them. Ruth. She carved birds all the time near the end, said her hands needed something to do while the rest of her was leaving. He touched one with a fingertip. She died 6 years ago, in a hospice, over on the east side of this city. Something cold and slow began to move through me. I didn't know why yet, but my body knew before my mind did. It always does. In her last weeks, he went on, there was a nurse who wouldn't leave her, who stayed past every shift, who sang to her in the dark when I couldn't bear to be in the room. God forgive me when I'd go stand in the hallway because I couldn't watch. His eyes were wet now. Ruth told me about that nurse near the very end. She said Elias, that woman took my own foolish little saying and handed it right back to me when I needed it most. She held my hand and told me the cold can't reach a warm heart. He looked up from the birds, straight at me. Ruth never knew her last name, but she knew her first one. She said it over and over those last few days like a comfort. He took a breath that shook. She said her name was Gloria. The room went very quiet. I did not move. Somewhere far off, I heard the heat tick in the walls and snow whispering against the glass in my own heart. And then it came back to me. All of it, all at once. The way a locked door swings open when you finally find the key you've been holding the whole time. Room 4, the East Side Hospice. 6 years ago. Room 4 at the end of the hall with the window that looked out on an old maple tree. A woman in that bed, thin as a reed, silver-haired, with the kindest tired eyes. A woman whose family, whose husband couldn't always come in the room because some love is too big to watch leave. I remembered her little hands always busy. Whittling. There were birds on that windowsill. Little wooden birds lined up in a row catching the light. I remembered pulling my chair up close in the dark. I remembered singing to her, "His eye is on the sparrow, and I know he watches me because she liked the bird songs," she said, because they matched her little flock on the sill. And I remembered Lord. I remembered now a saying she had. A funny little saying she'd fuss at me with when I worried over her being cold. The cold can't reach a warm heart, sugar. And how on one of her last nights, when the fear got into her eyes the way it does at the end, I had taken her hand and set it back to her. Her own words. "You hush now. The cold can't reach a warm heart. Not yours. Never yours." And she had smiled. And she was not afraid anymore. Her name was Ruth. I had sat with Elias Grant's wife while she died. I had held her hand and sung her home. 6 years ago in the dark, asking nothing, expecting nothing, remembering it only the way you remember the hundreds you sit with love, and then with letting go. And 6 years later, on the coldest night of my life, God had walked her husband out into the snow and set him down on my bench. I understood it then, the whole shape of it, and I could not hold it. I put my hand over my mouth and I wept. Not the quiet tears from the day before. This was something else. This came up from a place I didn't know I had. Because for 5 weeks I had been made to feel like a fool, like a used-up, trusting old woman, worth nothing but a garbage bag and a locked door. And here was the truth, sitting in 2 little birds on a desk, telling me that a kindness I gave away in the dark and forgot about had never once been lost. That it had been traveling toward me the whole time. That it had come back for me on the worst night of my life, wearing a thin jacket and no gloves. "I never got to thank her," Elias said, and he was crying too, now this powerful man openly unashamed. For 6 years I have carried that. The one person who made my Ruth's leaving gentle, and I never even got to shake her hand. And then a woman saved my life in the snow and gave me her last $20, and it took me until I heard your name in that first meeting, Gloria, for the earth to move under me. His voice broke clean in half. The night you found me freezing, I didn't know who you were, but Ruth knew. Somehow I have to believe Ruth knew. She sent me to the one bench in this whole cold city where the person sitting on it was you. He reached across and gently pushed both birds toward me. She carved them in pairs, always 2. She said a bird shouldn't be alone. He wiped his face with the back of his hand the same way I do. "Take them both, Gloria. They found their way home. So did you." I don't know how long the 2 of us sat there in that lamplight, an old man and an old woman crying over 2 little wooden birds, and one woman we had both loved without ever knowing we'd shared her. But I'll tell you what I felt underneath it when the crying finally slowed. For 5 weeks I had been drowning in the worst thing people can do to each other. The betrayal, the forging, the cold calculation in my own boy's voice. I had started to believe, God help me, that maybe that was the truth of the world, and my mother had been wrong all along, that kindness was just a soft spot for hard people to press on. And then this proof sitting right in front of me that the other thing is true too, that a good deed dropped into the dark does not disappear, that it keeps, that it waits, that it comes back around in its own time and finds you exactly when you can't take another step. Kindness given in the dark always finds its way home. He'd said that to me on the bench before either of us knew a thing. I thought it was just something a broken old man said. Turns out it was the truest thing anyone ever said to me. I picked up the 2 little birds and I held them in my 2 hands, and I felt my back straighten, and I felt something come into me that no lawyer and no recording could have put there. Because in the morning I was going to walk into a room and face the son who tried to erase me, and I was not walking in there as a foolish, trusting old woman anymore. I was walking in as the woman Ruth Grant chose, the woman who kept her husband alive, the woman whose kindness had been circling back around for 6 years to make sure that when the worst finally came, she would not have to face it alone. Let them bring their lawyers. I had something they would never understand. Before I tell you about that room, there's one thing you need to know because it says everything about the man Elias Grant turned out to be. The moment he saw my address in that file, the moment he understood his company was the one buying my house out from under me, he killed the deal. That same afternoon, he picked up the phone and pulled Grant Community Partners out of the entire Larchmere project, millions of dollars gone without a second's hesitation. He told his people the whole block was off the table until further notice. But he did one thing more, and it's the thing I'll always love him for. He did not fix it for me. He could have. A man like that could have made the whole thing disappear with a few phone calls and handed me back my house like a gift. And I'd have spent the rest of my life feeling like a woman who got rescued. Instead, he sat me down and said, "Gloria, this is yours to answer, not mine. I'll stand beside you in that room, but you're the one who walks in first. A woman who saved my life doesn't need saving. She needs somebody to hold the door." So on a gray Tuesday morning, 5 weeks after my son handed me a garbage bag, I walked into the marble lobby of a downtown title company to close out the sale of my home, the same closing Darius thought he was there to collect on. He was already there when I came in, him and Whitney and a lawyer in a sharp suit sitting at a long table in that big echoing lobby with the marble floors. Darius looked up and saw me, and his face did something complicated. He hadn't expected me. He'd figured I was tucked away somewhere by now, too ashamed and too tired to fight. "Mama," he said, standing up all smooth. "You didn't need to come. This is just paperwork. We can handle—" Then he saw the old man come in behind me, Elias, in one of his dark suits, and Loretta Banks beside him with her banker's box. Darius looked at Elias the way you look at a stranger who's wandered into the wrong room. Whitney actually smiled a little, that smile that never reached her eyes, and I saw her lean over and murmur something to Darius, and I knew exactly what it was because I know that woman. She was saying, "Look at your mother. She found some sad old man to lean on." How pathetic. Everybody at that table looked at Elias and saw nobody. An old man Gloria must have picked up out of pity. That's the whole reason I'm telling you this the way I am, because I want you to feel what they felt so you can feel what came next. Elias stepped up beside me, and he leaned in close and quiet just for me. He said the 6 words I opened this whole story with. "Gloria, tell them who I am." So I did. "Darius," I said. My voice was steady, steadier than it's ever been in my life. "This is Elias Grant. He's the founder of Grant Community Partners." I watched the color leave my son's face. "The buyer, baby, the one whose money you were about to collect. That's him, standing right here, and he's not buying anymore." The lawyer in the sharp suit sat up straight. Whitney's smile fell right off her face, and Loretta Banks set her box on that marble table and started laying it out one piece at a time, calm as Sunday. The forged deed dated the week I lay in a hospital bed with pneumonia, the hospital records, my admission bracelet, the doctor's own signature on the chart the same day my name supposedly signed my house away, the $180,000 loan taken out against my home in a name that wasn't written by my hand. And then last she set that little recorder on the table, and she pressed the button, and my son's own voice filled that marble room bouncing off the stone. "She'll sign whatever I put in front of her. She trusts me. And if she wouldn't sign, she's an old woman." She gets confused. Who's a bank gonna believe? The words went around that hard room and came back twice as loud. I watched my son listen to himself. Whitney was the first to move. She stood up so fast her chair scraped. "This was him," she said, pointing at Darius, already backing toward the door, already saving herself. "This was all him. I signed nothing. I want that on the record. I signed nothing." And she gathered her expensive coat, and she walked out of that lobby and out of his life heels clicking across the marble, and she never once looked back at the man she'd pushed into all of it. Whatever family those two thought they were building, it was hollow all the way through. First hard wind, and it just blew apart. And Darius, my Darius, turned to me, and every bit of the smooth was gone. He was just a scared boy now. "Mama," he said, and his voice cracked. "Mama, please, please, I'll fix it. Tell them you don't have to do this. You're my mother." And then my 34-year-old son sank down onto his knees on that cold marble floor in front of the lawyers and the stone and God and everybody, and he begged. That's the image I promised you at the very start. My boy on his knees in the marble lobby. I want to tell you it felt good. People always think it's supposed to feel good the moment the one who hurt you finally falls. It didn't. It felt like the saddest thing I ever saw, because I could still see the baby in him. 2:30 in the morning, snow on the window counting his fingers. You never stop seeing that no matter what they do. That's the curse and the mercy of being somebody's mother. Loretta was ready to bring the whole weight of the law down on him. Forgery, fraud, elder, financial abuse. She told me plain in the hall that I could send my son to prison for years and that plenty of people would say he'd earned every day of it. I thought about it. I did. I'm not a saint, and I won't pretend I am. I stood in that hallway and I thought about the garbage bag and the deadbolt and a woman her age, and part of me wanted him to feel every ounce of what he'd made me feel. But I'm 63 years old, and I have watched too many people leave this world with hate still clenched in their fists, and I promised myself a long time ago I would not be one of them. So here's what I did. And I'll tell you straight, it wasn't sweet and it wasn't a fairy tale. I took my house back. Free and clear, the fraudulent loan wiped out my name, restored on the deed where it always belonged. Elias's lawyers and Loretta saw to every bit of it, and I gave my son one road, and only one. He would confess to what he did in writing all of it. He would pay back every single dollar of that loan, however many years it took him. He would get help, real help for the debts and the mess that drove him to it. And if he did all of that, I would ask the court for mercy instead of the maximum. Not a clean escape. There would still be a record, still be consequences, still be a long, hard climb, but not a cage for the rest of his best years. He asked me why I'd do that for him after everything, and I told him the truest thing I know. I'm not doing it for you, Darius. You haven't earned one bit of it. I'm doing it for me, because I refuse to let what you did to me turn me into something cold. You bet your whole life on your mama being too soft to fight back. I picked up my purse. You were half right. I'm soft. I'll probably always be soft. But soft is not the same thing as weak, and you spent 34 years never once learning the difference. I stopped at the door, and I said the last thing I had to say to him. I won't spend what's left of my life hating my own child, but I will never again mistake being used for being loved. And those are two different things, son. I finally know the difference. I only wish I'd taught it to you. Then I walked out into the daylight, and I left my boy on his knees, and I did not look back either, but for a whole different reason than Whitney did. Now, let me tell you where I'm sitting as I tell you all this. It's been some months. I took the community liaison position at the Grant Foundation. $95,000 a year, and I earn every cent because now I'm the one who goes out and finds the folks nobody else sees. The old woman about to be put out of her apartment. The family sleeping in a car. The man on a bench in the snow. I know how to find them, you see. I've been them. I got my house back on Larchmere, Sam's porch and all. Some nights I sit out on it wrapped in a blanket and I feel him there. And on the windowsill of my office where the morning light comes in, sit two little wooden birds, side by side, never alone. One for Ruth Grant, who I sat with in the dark and loved and let go, and who somehow from wherever she is now reached back through 6 years to save me right when I needed saving. And one for my Samuel, who always told me my trusting heart was the best and most dangerous thing about me. He was right on both counts. As for Elias, well, we have Sunday dinner most weeks now. He's a good man and a lonely one, and so am I, if I'm honest. And there's a comfort in the two of us that I'm in no rush to name or hurry. At our age, you learn not to rush the good things. You learn to just let them be warm and be grateful and let tomorrow bring what it brings. Whatever it is, it'll be more than I ever thought I'd have again on that bench. I keep thinking about what he said to me that first night in the snow before either of us knew a single thing about the other. Kindness given in the dark always finds its way home. You just have to be patient enough to let it. I gave away a pair of gloves and my last $20 to a freezing stranger, and I never once expected a thing back. My mama always said that's the only kind of kindness that counts, the kind you give when there's nothing in it for you to somebody who can't pay you back. But she was wrong about one part, and I say that with all the love in the world for her memory. It does pay you back. Not always in money, and never on your schedule, but a good deed dropped into the dark is never ever lost. It keeps, it waits. And one cold night, when you've got nothing left and nowhere to go, it comes walking back up out of the snow to find you. They put me out with the trash to save themselves. They never once imagined that the cold they threw me into was the exact place I'd find the one man in this world who still remembered my kindness and the truth that would take back everything they stole. So that's my story. That's all of it start to finish. Now I've told you where I've been. I want to know where you are. Tell me the city you're watching from down in the comments. I've been reading every single one, and I mean that. Let this old woman see just how far her story has traveled. And if this touched something in you, stay with me. I've left 2 more stories right up on the screen that I think will find their way straight into your heart, same as this one found its way to you. Wherever you are tonight, Remember what a freezing old man told a broken woman on a bench in the snow. The cold can't reach a warm heart. It never could.